4. Greetings, salutations, respect, and love. You see who's on screen with me right now. Right now is the great, powerful, mighty Ted Leonard and his guitar. And John Boegehold. Oh, and he is here, and he is going to try to explain to us why pattern-seeking animals is so amazing, and he's going to try to explain to us exactly how you pronounce his name. And we've just got a full slate of things that we can talk about, from Spock's Beard to Enchant, but we are going to talk about pattern-seeking animals, because I'm telling you, if you don't know this band, brother, you're missing out. Ted, how are you?
Doing great, man. It's good to be here.
Thank you. And for those of you that do not know, Pattern Seeking Animals, their 4th album drops on Inside Out. What's the release date on that?
October 27th.
The 27th, their 4th album.
Yeah.
I've been blessed with an advance, review copy. They're very good about that at Inside Out, by the way. And guys, the new record is really, really, really cool. John, I know you're the main principal songwriter and whatnot. What was going on in your mind as you started preparing songs for this album, and how do you pronounce your last name?
Boegehold.
So I was close.
It's easy. It's just like it's spelled. Right? It's just like it's spelled.
You got it right.
I think I got it right, actually.
You're good. I've heard everything.
I bet you have. My last name is Lade. Lade. You would think
Lade.
That would be. Man, I hear everything. So
yeah. I'm sure you got a lot of comments on that name in school. Yeah, Scot got
and
laid.
My sister too.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, as far as the album, I don't know if I was thinking of anything necessarily different, because I'm always writing. So when you turn the last album in, I just start writing, and my only thought is always just try not to duplicate what we've already done. Obviously, there's we're all influenced by ourselves to some level, but I just wanted to. If I found myself going into a direction like, oh, that's like Time Has a Way after the last album or whatever, I'd steer clear of that. So it does sound different, and part of that is because where we recorded it with a different engineer in a different studio, with Frank.
Yeah, what's the deal with Frank Rosado?
Frank Rosado.
Now he had worked with Spock's Beard before, hadn't he?
Yeah, what happened was Frank, I've known Frank since the mid-90s, and I've done a few records with him and different projects at the time. Right. And at the time when Kevin Gilbert died, Spock's hadn't finished. I guess was that Kindness of Strangers or Beware of Darkness? It's all blending. Yeah, and there were still a couple tracks not left, and that were left that hadn't had parts recorded. So they needed a studio, and I recommended Frank. So we went over there, and as I remember, I think Rio did some organ overdubs, and then Frank did some. I remember Frank. I don't remember, but they were over there for a while doing stuff. All the stuff that needed to be done after Kevin passed. Yeah. And Nick did some. Yeah, Nick was actually doing Genesis at that time. He was recording Calling All Stations. Yeah, and I remember he came back. Yeah, he came back right in the middle of while we were working at Frank's. So.
Right.
I just don't remember too much about those sessions, but yeah, Frank has a.
He's got the pedigree, right?
He's got the pedigree, yeah.
He belongs in the family, That's important. It's like put Tony Kaye in the band, right? He was a founding member.
Absolutely.
The guy playing keyboards under the stage.
I met that guy. He used to work at Westlake Music. I think his name was Casey something.
Casey Jones or something?
I don't remember his last name, but he used to work at Westlake Music, and I knew the guy. And he goes, I got this gig. I'm going to be playing with Yes under the stage. Cool. That's very cool.
I've seen pictures of him like hiding away in the shadows. It's thankless work.
It's like David Lee Roth did the same thing, when they had the first, But anyway.
Ted wouldn't know anything about standing in the shadows as a fifth member of a super group or anything.
The front cover of the Transatlantic Live album is just like there's all the 4 of the guys, and then there's a big gust of fog right in front of me. It's like I'm just totally not visible at all. But whatever.
Ed who?
It's not my band.
That's right. But we can still poke at the bear a little bit. Why not?
Yeah. Also, I was going to say, with Frank's a great guy, very easy to work with, and as was, Rich is the same thing. Rich Mauser, we did like 3 albums with him, and Spock's albums before that. I've known him for many, many years. I had been kind of thinking about going with another student engineer just to shake things up after 3 albums.
Yeah.
I think you get into a groove. And with Rich, it's total golden handcuffs because he's so good.
Yeah.
It's like you don't want to break away. But the only product I needed was last summer. I was ready to record some drum tracks. And he said, I think maybe he was even out with Transatlantic. He was over in Europe mixing for someone, then he was going on vacation. So he said, well, I'm not going to be able to get you in for like 2.5 months at this point because he was booked. And I said, okay, that's cruel. I called Frank immediately and said, you game for doing an album? And he goes, oh yeah. So it was cool. And they have very different approaches of mixing and recording stuff, which is great. And also the older you get, I remember a story once about, they were talking to John Lodge about Moody Blues gigs. And he said, at this age, the only thing I want to do, we'll play venues that are very close to a top flight golf club, a golf course, because they like to play golf. So he said, just book us near there. That's all I'm asking. And Frank is 10 minutes from where I live, where Rich, in the best of LA traffic, was 45 minutes one way. It was just a nightmare. So it was just a little more, easy to hang.
So it was kind of just good fortune then. We love Rich. I mean, I've heard so much that Rich has worked on. I think Rich's very first production job was a dude I was in a band with called the X Idol. So I've been in awe of him since like forever. But yeah, the freshness of this new album, it has a different sound. And I could tell right away, as soon as the needle dropped, man, I knew, A, this probably wasn't done anywhere near the Mouse House. And B, I'm kind of digging the new direction. Would you call it even a new direction, or just little minor nuances that are different?
I don't know. It's I was just going to add with Rich. Yeah, Rich mixed the live stuff on the album, on the bonus. So he's still, involved in the album. He mixed all that live stuff. New direction, I don't know. I don't know if I'm planning to do a new direction, but I think the trick is always, when there's so many albums so close to each other, is trying to make an album that just didn't sound like, part of the last album they just chopped it in half and okay, here's the next one a year later. I think the approach is kind of the same, except with vocals, like Ted mentioned. We focus a lot more on the vocals up front. There's different schools of engineering and mixing. Like if you listen to a lot of the old style stuff, all the instruments are right there in your face, and the vocals, you can hear them and understanding, but they sound like they're like just back. They're back in the mix, even though you can understand them, which I think was fine in the time when everything was going through a radio and all the compressors and everything like that. Sure. You hear it on the radio, and it's like, okay, everything sounds even. But then there's more the pop approach, where the vocal is right up front. Frank won't even start a mix until he has all the vocal parts, because that's where he starts.
Yeah.
Which is a different way than most people, where they'll build up the drums and the bass and scratch vocal. We'll get the real vocal later. He won't even touch a mix until the final vocal is done, which I'm not used to working with. But it was cool because
I mean, you're in this environment. Does this affect the way the songs develop in how, when you're in the studio actually laying down separate tracks? I'm thinking this can kind of change the whole approach to everything you're doing, because to me, it is a vocal first mentality. Yeah, it kind of changes the intention and the mind state and the whole atmosphere of the thing. I mean, did you sense that as you're laying down tracks?
Yes, definitely, while mixing, because it's a different approach. And also, I didn't do this because of the way Frank mixes, but I originally thought that I wanted to go with some outside backing vocalists for the blend, only because Ted obviously is great and Jimmy is great as a backing vocalist, but I was always missing hearing that third different voice in there. And my voice is just, I can sing, Dave can sing, but we're not really, it's not pleasant to my ears anyway.
And am I hearing a female backing vocals?
Yeah, there's a few of them.
Sounds
woman
great.
named Abby. Yeah, they're great, all great singers. And Diane, who has writing credits on a few of the songs with me, came in and she did a lot of the backing vocals. She has a real strong voice, and I like it because I was always into those. Obviously in the studios these days, you can.
John, she's the one that sang with like Eric Clapton or whatever.
No, that's Marcy Levy. Marcella Detroit.
She was on there.
No, she's on one of them too. No, Diane, I was in that band Orphan Moon with her and Dave, years ago. And she has a great voice. And I was just really happy because I always like the vocal parts, even though you can stack them up with Ted and Jimmy and make them huge. But the really cool things to me were when you'd hear the Beatles or Fleetwood Mac or Crosby, Stills and Nash, where they'd have three unique voices in that mix.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I was going for, just to, shake things up.
Yeah, you touched on Diane getting some songwriting credits. How did that come about, having a quote unquote outsider, somebody outside the band, actually getting songwriting credits attached to it? How'd that work out? I mean, was that something? I just found that interesting.
Well, yeah, no, because the songs she's on are songs I wrote with her originally years ago. But then I brought them. I completely rewrote
Orphan Moon stuff.
Yeah. I rewrote. So like Clouds That Never Rain and Love Is Still the Light, or just essentially complete rewrites. I took, I think, some of the original lyrics and some of the original melodies, but really changed an awful lot about the arrangement and added new parts and whatever. Window to the World was a song I've wanted to do forever. And we did demos of it years ago, and it never quite turned out. And I just always loved that song.
It didn't turn out because you didn't have Ted Leonard singing it.
Well, yeah, originally Diane was singing.
Let's be honest, man. This dude over here can make pretty much anything sound absolutely incredible. Your vocals sound great on this record, Ted. This different approach with having Frank. Did it actually put more wear and tear in your voice? Was he like demanding you do additional vocal takes and all that kind of stuff? Because it sounds stacked, man. It sounds huge.
Yeah, no, I mean, I did all my recording at home, so we didn't record there for the vocals. But when I heard, there was at least a couple of occasions where when I heard how loud the vocal was going to be in the mix, it made me want to go, I want to redo this line or that line.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Once you hear it that naked, and it's not really, there's not a ton of effects or stereo panning, or like stereo delay on the vocals just to, give that stereo effect or whatever. It's really just right down the middle and fairly. I'm sure if you soloed it out, you hear all the reverb and everything.
Right.
When you listen to the mix, it's fairly dry and present and kind of intimate throughout, even on the louder parts. So it's like the belty kind of parts. So it's definitely, if there was any flaws in the take, they were very evident. They may have by with a different.
Nowhere to hide, right? Yeah. Nowhere to hide.
Yeah, and it, the idea is that you're just trying to put out a good record, right? I mean, at the end of the day. So how does Bulletproof end up on the record?
Bulletproof, it probably wouldn't have, except for two things. Yeah. Number one, of all the songs I've written in the past 20 years, that's probably one of my top 5 favorites out of hundreds. I've always loved that song. In the Spock's version, I wasn't happy with the way it turned out for a few different reasons, which we won't get into. And then because no one could decide what songs were the best ones to put in the album, they sent it over to Inside Out and said, you choose which goes in the album. And they listened to all the songs like once and decided that one was meant to go on the bonus disc.
Yeah.
And at that point I was like, whatever. But if it had been in the main album, I wouldn't have redone it.
Yeah.
But it kind of ended up in that bonus disc ghetto. And I was always annoyed with it because I thought, damn, it's such a good song.
Yeah.
Not to brag or anything, but for me anyway, it was to me on that album, Noise Floor was the two. If I were producing it and if I were to be the one choosing the songs, my 2 favorites was the one Ted wrote, Somebody's Home, which I've always, that song to me is just a killer song.
Unreal.
And I thought Bulletproof should have been on the main album, but what do I know? It's fine because I'm very happy with the way it turned out. I rewrote a few things on it. Rewrote the intro, and the bridge is all different. The ending is different, and the choruses are slightly different, and the backing vocals are all different. Again. So
yeah, I went
that's
back
how it
and
ended up.
listened. I went back and listened to the Spock's Beard version the other day, just because the first couple go rounds, I'm like, I don't hear it being that much different. And then I listened to the Spock's Beard version again. I'm like, whoa, this intro's different. Like you said, the bridge is different. The whole ending section has a whole different thing going on. But to your original point about, Bulletproof being, relegated to bonus disc ghetto land. And you are absolutely correct, because honestly, John, that song didn't do a whole lot for me, man. It was on bonus disc, Desert Land. I didn't really notice it at all.
Yeah, I think that happens not just with that one. I've just, both as an artist and a fan, I've always hated the idea of bonus tracks. Hate it for various reasons. Because if you put it on the main album, you're wrecking the whole flow of the thing. If you put it on another one, no one's going to hear it. And a lot of times people do say, well, let's take the song we hate the most and, put it on as a bonus track. I just never liked them.
Yeah.
So, but you have to do it. I mean, that's part of the deal. We need a bonus track to be able to do this release. And hey,
there's always other considerations.
There's a few good songs that ended up on that bonus, but that's always kind of been the case. Like I felt like the stuff that ended up on the bonus disc from Brief Nocturnes was, we should have kept that.
Absolutely. I was just going to say that. An obvious one there that needed to be corrected. But, a lot of times you don't notice these songs. And John, you're absolutely right. Bulletproof is absolutely one of my favorite songs that you've ever written. But, I'm going to take this opportunity while we're, doing this just to, plant my flag in the ground for Bennett Built a Time Machine as being one of the greatest songs ever written. My favorite John Boegehold song. Just love that. Oh, sorry. Ted didn't sing that one.
Ask him about that one.
No, he sent me the demo and I just, I sang along to it and I just wasn't vibing with it. And Jimmy's like, "Oh, let me give it a try." And so I'm like, "Sure, whatever." I didn't actually think it was going to make the album, so I was not as enthusiastic about it as everybody else. But once it was done, it was like, it was great.
It wasn't for you. I mean, that's the thing about certain vocalists. You know how it is, man. You've been in a band forever, Ted. Certain vocalists and certain bands, certain songs just meant for each other,
Right.
And I really, really feel like John's music, your voice, just an incredible marriage. I mean, just perfect. And it's like with each album, there seems to be like just this weird symbiosis that's going on. Like John knows the register. You know what he's going for when you get the demo, and vice versa. Pretty awesome.
One of these days, the bonus track should be the version that I got to record to with you singing.
I was just about to say, I still have a version somewhere with your vocal track on Bennett.
Oh yeah, oh my god.
Somewhere, I know it because I don't.
And I just sound bored. I'm just listening, I'm thinking, I'm like, I hate this.
I don't even remember, but I just do remember when we actually recorded it. It was just me, Rich, and Jimmy in the control booth, and we just kept building the parts up, and it kept getting better and better. It's like, oh, cool. But different vocalists. You're absolutely correct. I mean, sometimes for whatever reason, a vocalist just won't, like Ted says, vibe for a song.
Yeah.
And if someone's really into it, it's like, hey, give it a shot. What the hell?
Why not? I mean, hey, even Pink Floyd had trouble with Have a Cigar, right?
Oh, yeah.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Roger couldn't do it. David couldn't do it. Hey.
Yeah.
We'll get somebody else then.
But it happens. And as far as writing, I keep bugging Ted to write songs, I keep bugging it, but he's too happy right now. He needs some grief in his life, or
he does.
A bad marriage or something. Yeah.
I'm sure happy. It's coming. It's been quite a few years in a row of good luck. So I'm sure bad stuff's coming. That's the way.
No. Seriously, John, you seem like a pretty well-adjusted guy. You don't seem to fall prey to that. You don't need tragedy in your life to write a good song, do you?
No.
Well, no, because I don't. In the one or two, I think the only time I can remember in the past 20 years, I put something from my actual inspired by my life was in a song called Spock's Beard Octane, called Surfing Down the Avalanche. And I wrote, and because it just seemed to be perfect, and there was a bunch of lines in there about an old girlfriend who became an opioid addict. And I thought, with the way the rest of the thing was going, oh, it's perfect. And then Nick added some other vocals. But I just always think my life is just too boring to write about. So I just
I always feel like there's a couple songs that almost sound like, I wonder how autobiographical that is. Like the one where, because obviously you're not a hoarder or anything, but there's that song where
these are my things.
These are my things. That's
I wrote it specifically after watching that show Hoarders, on whatever A&E or whatever, because it freaked me out so much because I'm very organized and neat. I don't collect anything. Well, guitars, I can't stop that, and gear. But
that's why you just replace toys with, in the songs.
Instruments. Exactly. And I just remember watching that Hoarders show and just being freaked out because these people were so insane and all the junk, the clutter and everything. And at some point I thought, that might be a kind of a cool idea for a song.
The other thing is a recurring theme that John writes about. There's breakups are always in his songs. I mean, in every album, there's at least 2 or 3 songs where part of the song will be about some breakup, and then the rest of the song will be about something completely different. And I always wonder, like, how much of that are you? What are you drawing from? I'm becoming the interviewer. What are you drawing?
You're doing a better job than me.
It's fun. No, it's all like short stories or writing fiction to me. I'll think of here's a guy who just like in Soon But Not Today, the guy's breaking up and he's in the house and he slides a suitcase across the floor. A lot of that imagery type of stuff comes when I used to write a lot of country stuff 20 years ago.
Okay.
You have to write something like it's real life, and every line has to make sense. So if you're sitting there in a country session writing with someone, it's like, okay, let's write about a guy who comes home and his wife left him for the plumber, or anything. You just come up with an idea, then, okay, let's write from this. This guy's going to be named Jim, and she's going to be named Sarah, But I just always write. A lot of times I come up with a very vague concept and then write words that you wouldn't necessarily know it's about that concept, which I always liked about Prog is you can kind of put your own,
you can get away with a lot of that
meaning. I've had people come up to me and they're absolutely sure they know what a certain song's about.
Right.
And they'll say, I realize this and this and this. And I'm thinking,
sure,
nothing. For whatever you hear is good.
Yeah, if you like it, go with it, man.
Yeah.
And the best songs are written that way, that there's a certain degree of vagueness. You want to bake that into the songwriting so that it can actually, touch more people,
right,
et cetera, et cetera. You don't want to.
Yeah, I mean, I always draw, like he alluded to, I draw from personal experience, but then I try to make it vague enough to where it's not obvious that I'm talking about myself or something I went through.
Right. Yeah.
Sometimes it's pretty obvious. I mean, there's a series of divorce.
My name is Ted. Right. Yeah.
And I'm really sad.
And really sad because my girl left me. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. We don't really love songs like that, but I'll tell you the songs that we do love are songs like, well, you mentioned These Are My Things. That first album then goes on to We Write the Ghost Stories. I had to throw that in there. It's my wife's favorite, Pattern Seeking Animals song. I love that song too, man. It's probably my favorite one too. I love it.
It's funny because you mentioned that the other day. Yeah. We Write the Ghost Stories. And literally the other day I was talking to Jimmy before you said this. And we were trying to think of we were just going over some of the songs on the album just to talk about a couple things. And he said, I'm really surprised because his favorite song on the album, he said, is We Write the Ghost Stories. And I said, that's funny because that's one of my favorite I've written for anything for Pattern Seeking Animals. And you, Scott, were literally the first person who has ever mentioned that song to me.
That's
ever.
Crazy.
Yeah, which is crazy because what a coincidence. But yeah, Jimmy and I both thought the same thing.
Yeah. And then that first album goes into no man's land from there, and then it crosses home with a great closer. Yeah. The second album seems to be the one everybody digs. I don't know if you've noticed that, just talking to prog fans and whatnot. Everybody I know seems to think Prehensile Tales was your best album. Do you hear that from people?
I haven't heard that, and I've heard a lot of people have liked oh my God, what's Only Passing Through. But sometimes I'm getting those vibes from interviewers, and of course some of them are too kind and not honest enough, you know, and so they're
that's
one of the best. But I mean, I honestly think if I had to put those first three in order, it would have been 1, 3, 2 instead of 1, 2, 3 as far as like favorite.
Interesting.
Maybe even 3, 1, 2. I probably would have put Prehensile last in that order.
Yeah, I think I'm 3, 1, 2.
Yeah, I'm
3, 1, 2.
I have no objectivity. Prehensile Tales, I have heard a lot of people say it is their favorite, and at the time, to me, there's some really great things on that album. Lifeboat, I've always loved. That turns.
I can't believe we haven't done that song
live. I know you do it on the cruise, right?
I've always wanted to do that on the cruise. Just
the ship's going down.
Everyone on the lifeboat.
Where's the captain?
But on that album at the time, I was thinking, oh, this is so far and away our best album. And looking back at it, I think it's still really good.
Yeah.
But it's like with anything, with any artist, you look back and you go, you know, maybe that song should have done this, or maybe that song shouldn't have been on there, or maybe. But there's always second guessing.
I think with the second album, honestly, it was a departure from the first. The first one had a little bit of Spock's beard DNA still on it.
Yeah.
Which is bad imagery, but don't picture it. But
yeah, get the black light out, right? Get the ultraviolet light.
A little CSI investigation. A little Prehensile Tales was like we'd become our own band at that point, and then only passing through with all the kind of spaghetti western little sections to it, which no other prog band would touch. And I love that because I'm a telly guy, so I love the country
twang.
Rock.
The telly with the tremolo going. Oh, absolutely, brother. It sounded so good when I've got to run. What was that song called?
Why Don't We Run?
Why Don't We Run? The first time I heard that song, man, my mind was blown, and I am so happy. There's little hints of that even still on album number 4.
Oh yeah, just because I'm a huge spaghetti western, and like Ted said, it's a unique thing in prog to do that kind of stuff.
It is.
So in every song, it's like, okay, I got to break out the electric sitar, and I got to break out the chimes and the telly through the tremolo, and
you do
that. I just love that song.
Sorry did Roy schedule you for a 7 o'clock too, John, or was that just me? So I might have to duck out right now. I have a 7 o'clock interview too.
No, I scheduled this.
You might have somebody. Hey, he might have somebody else for you, Ted. I don't know.
He had lots of music with Jorge.
I don't know Jorge.
He
sounds like a good dude though, and
I'm wide open.
To talk to you, he's gonna bury you with enchant questions.
Okay.
Watch.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me.
Ted, we love you, man.
Carry on.
Yeah, I'm good for another half hour or however much you want me. I'm all good.
All right, I'll see you guys later.
It's the great Ted Leonard, ladies and gentlemen. He's got to duck out, but that's all right. We love you anyway, Ted.
It's finally good to meet you in person, Ted.
I've
never actually seen him before.
Who was that guy?
Who was that guy? Oh, that's Ted. That's Ted.
All right, bye guys.
See you
later.
Yeah, that was hilarious. Yeah,
So I actually have to leave at 4:30, but you got me until then. So
that's whatever. As you could stay as long or as short as you want. We got tons of stuff to talk about, and I was feeling bad. Ted's audio wasn't great, and he was feeling a little left out, I think.
Oh well, he'll come back. I'm sure he will. So
yeah.
So whatever you want to.
They all do. They all come back. Now, as you notice, we don't do questions here. We talk about stuff, but I do actually have a question, and that is on your Facebook page. You pretty actively put up and post some of the music that you've been listening to, and some songs and artists that have been touching you. And it's an eclectic array of different things that you put up on your page. And how much do you think you're consciously aware of the eclecticism of all that when you yourself are writing?
It all goes into the toolbox in your head. It all goes into the jukebox, whatever you want to call it, of styles and sounds. Yeah. But I think you and I mentioned about the Monkees, for example. To me, it's like the old saying, when the pupil is ready, the teacher appears, that type of thing. I was too young when the Beatles broke to make any, to me, they were just like, oh, there's another song by, like Sonny and Cher, the Rolling Stones, whatever.
Yeah.
But when the Monkees hit, I was just ready to be catapulted into wanting to do music with my life. Because when that started, and those songs were so damn good, all of the songs.
The first album was 66. When did the show start?
66. It debuted in, I guess, September of 66.
Right. Okay.
And the first album came out, and I was 9 years old then. And I just remember hearing, first, the show was great. Oh, there's 4 guys, they live in a place, and they're playing in a band. And then the songs, all of a sudden, one song after another, whether it's, Daydream Believer or Last Train to Clarksville, Pleasant Valley Sunday, hit after hit after hit. And I had a conversation the other day. I still think Mickey Dolenz is one of the underappreciated rock vocalists of our time. Fantastic vocal.
Burton Cummings,
another one.
And Mickey Dolenz.
Dolenz.
If you want me to put a gun to my head, the 2 greatest rock singers of all time, this is the dude from the Monkees. What? He's insane. No,
exactly.
Seriously.
So when I started, listening to music, I started listening to more pop, and then I got more into the Beatles when they started putting in like Abbey Road, but I was still always listening to pop music.
Yeah.
All the time. Just the bubblegum, the gooeyest bubblegum music, the better for me. And even when I got into prog, like in 10th grade, when some kid brought King Crimson's Court of the Crimson King into art class, because we could play albums back then when we were working.
Right.
And I flipped out. I was 14, whatever I was.
Yeah.
Just flipped out. And that just set me off into prog. And within a month, I had bought Genesis and Yes and ELP and all that stuff. And over time, a lot of people, when they get into the stuff like prog or jazz or whatever, they kind of get away from the pop stuff.
Right. They fall into that rabbit hole, and they get siloed up. Yeah.
I understand completely, but I never lost that. So to this day, 50 years later or whatever, I still listen to current pop stuff all the time.
Yeah. And
because there's always great stuff happening. And I tell people this, and they're, my age.
No, you're crazy.
It's crazy. The best good music was, Steve Miller Band and 1996. You know what I mean? And hello, you there?
Hey, we're
hello.
Hey, John. John seems to be cutting out the StreamYard feed. Seems to be acting funny.
You hear me?
Yeah, you seem. Can you hear me, John?
You can edit this out later.
Yeah, I think. I think we're having some kind of technical difficulties here.
Let's see. Yeah, but I know we're downstairs working on a cable.
It's the cable guy. That's what's going on. Ladies and gentlemen, John Boegehold's got the cable guy at his house, and they're messing with his signal strength. He's not getting the kind of Wi-Fi or whatever he needs to generate the signal that is required for him to carry on with this interview. But, that's all right. So I am just going to fill up time. I'm going to fill up space and talk about how great the new Pattern Seeking Animals album is. It's their 4th album. It's called Spooky Action at a Distance. And I've been really enjoying it. I've had it for about a month now, and 10 tracks, and I like all 10 of them. It's a real testament to just how great these guys are. I'm going to remove old John and maybe see about new John.
Here I am.
New John is back. Yeah,
okay, we're back.
Take old John off and put new John back up, and
just a little editing later. Just a little editing.
You're a funny guy, man. You know what I did while you were I just went on a rant about Pattern Seeking Animals. We're not editing that out. Are you crazy?
Going right to tape. But anyway, so wherever I was with pop music, I listened to it continually. I listen to everything which everyone else I know hates. I told someone the other day, I thought, they're asking who's a great songwriter right now. And I said Taylor Swift.
Absolutely.
And he looked at me like, Taylor Swift, she's writing for like 14-year-olds. I said, I'm a songwriter. And when I listen to her songs, I think they're really great. I've listened to her forever, but the one thing which sets her above, there will be at least one line in every song where I'll hear it and think, Oh, that's genius. That's just absolute genius, the way she put that idea across.
You're preaching to the choir, John. I've got all of the Taylor Swift out. Well, I don't have the first one yet on vinyl. I've got all the rest of them. Here's a girl that every single album she's ever released, except the first one, which hit number 2, all the rest of them hit number 1, man.
Yeah. Well, the first one is, the country album.
Yeah.
And I was writing country at the time, and I remember hearing her thinking, God, this kid's like 15. She's going to she's going straight to the top. Yeah. She is so good. But I listen to all this stuff, whether it's current pop, Doja Cat or any of those people that are out there right now. A lot of girl groups, a lot of K-pop stuff, J-pop, but I still listen to a lot of current prog too. I watch almost no TV. I never watch movies. I just listen to music constantly.
Oh yeah.
The newer, the better. I have a bunch of playlists, and it's kind of a lonely thing because I think most people, and it's understandable, when they hit their 30s, they've kind of stopped. And all all the music that impressed them and kind of bonded with their psyche as a teenager, nothing has that effect anymore. So they're fine with listening to the Doobie Brothers and the Stone, whatever.
Yep. And
to me, I've just never got sick of that excitement of hearing a great pop song with a killer hook. As a fan, and then also as a producer and a writer, it's more stuff which goes in your brain to work with, not necessarily the songwriting, but the song craftsmanship. Sure. Like I'll hear some, K-pop song made for 15-year-old Asian kids or whatever, and I'll think, damn, this technology they're using and the production is so cool. And I never would have thought in a million years to do these two type of sections together. Right. But they made it work out. So that goes in the brain. And the next time I'm working with something, it's like, oh, let me try that key change thing in the middle of the bridge, which might work. And so a lot of it is just for reference. And plus I've always just really loved hearing the newest synth sounds or production techniques or bass, whatever they're doing. I'm really into that. And I try and talk to people even remotely close to my age, and they have no idea. They just don't know. And it's fine. It's whatever.
Yeah. And that's understandable. And you hit the nail right on the head. Once you hit a certain age, music really doesn't affect you the same way as it did when you were 13 or 14 years old. That's understandable. Yes is my favorite band. Yeah. No one will ever top that. And right. And I can say that with great confidence because no music will ever hit me that exact same way with that intensity as when you're at that age. But a lot of people, they just shut it down. They're comfortable with the Doobie Brothers for the rest of their lives, and that's okay.
It's cool too. It's like I'm really excited for the new Stones album. Yeah. But when you talk about Yes, I was a complete Yes fanatic as a teenager. Yes and Genesis.
Oh yeah, me too.
That was it. And I saw them every millions of times. I had another thing I was talking about to someone. Is that, for example, when I listen to Genesis, I'm sure you have songs like this. When I listen to Genesis, for example, off of Trick of the Tail, that song Mad Mad Moon.
Love it.
When I hear that, I'm automatically transported back to that time I was living in this apartment with my friends and this band I was in. You're right there.
Yeah.
And I always think that's when you're impressed with music and that when it connects with you.
Yeah.
And I asked someone, what's your favorite, what's your a song which does that to you? Talking to a friend of mine, he goes, oh, it was Close to the Edge by Yes. And I said, imagine, because it reminds him of all these things. In fact, I saw the Close to the Edge tour with this guy. I said, I said, well, imagine this. Today, John Anderson comes out and he says, you know what? You're never going to believe this. What we thought was the best song we wrote for that album, we lost the tape. We lost the tape before we were in a deadline and we couldn't find it. So we couldn't put it on the album. It was our favorite song off the album to do. And because of lineup changes or whatever, we never did another version of it. But they were tearing down this old studio and they found it behind a wall and we're going to release it. Now they might release that song and it may sound great, but it's not going to have the same emotional impact, and you and I, Siberian Khatru and Close to the Edge have from that album.
That's a good point.
Yeah. It doesn't matter who it is. It may be great, but it's not going to sit with you the same way.
I think it's just the brain chemistry. You're a little kid. Oh, yeah. Dr. Phil would go on and on about, the brain when you're young, whatever. I'm not a psychologist, but I know there's something to it.
I heard that described as the primacy effect, where the first thing with music or art, and it all happens when you're a teenager, mostly, the first time, I almost had an out of body experience when I go back to Yes, Close to the Edge tours, right after Alan White joined the band in Detroit in September 21st, 1972. I just happen to remember. And there was 2 opening bands. There was the Eagles, and the Eagles, which I always loved, but they just had one song out at the time. Take It Easy. And part of the reason they were on there is because Glenn Fry was a Detroit. He was a local guy, and everyone knew his mother, who worked at this diner back then. So they were on the bill. And the second group I had never heard of, little group called Gentle Giant. I didn't know anything about them. And when they played, I was so flipped out. That was a 6-man Gentle Giant when Phil Schulman was still in the band.
Yeah, Phil was still in the band.
Yeah, and I just remember standing there, even before Yes came out, thinking, my life has changed. This is so good.
Yeah.
I can't imagine having that reaction today hearing something. I might hear something and go, oh, that's really cool. I like that. But it's never going to have that, that gut, that punch in the gut thing, which impresses you so much.
Yeah.
And of course, the next day I went out and bought every Gentle Giant I could find, and saw them a bunch of times after that.
We all have that one band that we wish we would have seen during the heyday. Gentle Giant is that band. I mean, I got to see Yes, I got to see Genesis, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, Pink Floyd, Led Zeppelin. So I'm blessed, man. I saw them all. Kansas back in the day, Styx back in the day.
Yeah.
But never saw Gentle Giant, and it hurts my soul. It really does.
Well, the next time Gentle Giant came through town in Detroit was for Rick Wakeman did the solo tour with the orchestra.
Yeah.
For was it Journey to the Center of the Earth?
Probably Journey.
I was getting mixed up, or King Arthur. One of the two. He had the orchestra live. I just get those two mixed up. Gentle Giant opened him on one of those, and then Gary Wright was Gary Wright was the middle band.
Gary Wright, yeah.
So I got to see Gentle Giant, a few times. They opened up for Renaissance once too, which is great. But no, you're right with those groups. There's a couple.
What would be one of yours? Group that you never got the chance to see, or you missed the chance.
Putting aside the obvious, like the Beatles.
Yeah.
Led Zeppelin I never saw live. And it was only because it was just it didn't work out. I was between moving, or I was in another state doing something when they played in Detroit. I couldn't go.
Yeah.
The one my brother always talks about, it's funny because he had tickets to see Elvis Presley at the Pontiac Silverdome. And he said, you know what? I can't go because he had school and he was studying. I just can't go. So he gave us tickets. So he goes, I'll have a chance to see him again. And of course, he died a month later. But you're right. There's always those bands you would have loved to have seen. But luckily, because we grew up in that time when all these great prog groups. I saw all those. ELP a million times, and Genesis with Peter Gabriel. I saw all that stuff back then. Of course, that makes me very old. But what
it does. But Let's be honest. There's there's just a certain thing that was going on. We all know it. We try to skirt around it, and I am super supportive of new prog acts. But we understand that we can fight the good fight, and we can make sure that prog is back on the map at least a little bit, and that's what we do every day. We fight that fight, but we also do so in the understanding that it's never going to be 1972 again.
Yeah, it's funny because I listen to a ton of new prog. I try to listen to everything that comes out at least once, just to there's this the band Retreat from Moscow.
Oh yeah, their second album's awesome.
It's awesome, and I heard the first one just out of random. Yeah, it was good. Yeah, the newest one kicks ass, and I've been listening to that one. I was kind of surprised they put one out because I thought this is just something. We're going to put out the first album just because 20 years ago, just for grins.
Weren't most of those songs like written back in the 80s and stuff on that first album? It's just crazy. So turning around and putting out a second album with new material that's better than the stuff they've been working on for 20 years. What's a third album going to be like?
Yeah, I went immediately went to where I think about it from Bandcamp or Burning Shed, whatever I got it from, and I listened to it a bunch of times, and it kicks ass.
Good tip for our people, in case they missed it, because I know my
Yeah.
people they'll like blow up the comments and what was that band you mentioned at 4432?
Yeah. Retreat from Moscow. I love that.
Don't make me rewind and watch my own video again, please.
Right, exactly. So and then I listen. Obviously, I'm a huge, big Train fan. Those guys could do no wrong. And groups like Wobbler, Flower Kings, I'm hit and miss with. I love Royna's writing though, so there's always something good.
Yeah.
But even with all that, I'm sure you subscribe to Prog magazine, right?
Yeah.
Of course, like everyone does.
Yeah.
I get that every month.
Me too.
And I swear to God, half of those bands I've never heard of. Even as much as I think I'm keeping up with stuff, there's always tons of stuff I never hear. So of course I have to get down. Okay, let's go to Spotify or YouTube and listen to these guys or whatever. And the ones like Exploring Birdsong, I found out about them through Prog. I love that.
Nice.
Man, they're good. Love
that. Was a good discovery. The
3-piece with her playing piano and the bass player plays also synth bass and the drum. It's just a kick-ass band. So
fantastic.
A lot of good stuff out there. A lot of good stuff out there.
There's a ton out there, and I know it can actually be a little bit exhausting, a little bit overwhelming for me and you. We're a couple of music nerds. I am blessed in that I have a job where I drive from one Amish building in the middle of nowhere to another Amish business in the middle of nowhere. So I got a lot of time on my hands while I'm working to listen to a lot of music.
Yeah,
a lot of people do not have that luxury, and then they're just bombarded with so many options, so many bands. It could become very, very overwhelming for folks. So that's why I tell them, John, it's very simple. Just watch the Prog Corner. We'll tell you what to listen to.
What's new and what you should be listening to. And like my day job, as I've done for 20 years, is I manage a bunch of apartment buildings, property management. But cool. I work from home. I'm sitting at the apartment they give me right now, and you can see my a studio behind me back there.
There you go.
With the blackout curtain, but so I get to work from home all day, and I drive around, and it's the same thing. I wake up in the morning, and besides turn my studio on, because I like to get up and write at like 6 or 7 in the morning, but then I just start going through Spotify playlists and YouTube and listening to new stuff, whatever the current stuff is, whether it's alt rock or pop or R&B, whatever. There's so much good stuff out there.
Yeah.
And you see, if you're driving between buildings like you are, you just got it going. You got whether it's Sirius XM or the Spotify, whatever.
It's usually Spotify. And I'm gonna plug Prog Radio.
I was gonna say, I have that app on my phone. I listen to that.
It's a great app. I mean, every single Prog fan should have that on their phone.
Yeah.
It's Kevin does a great job over there, and
he does.
He's a big supporter of Pattern Seeking Animals. So obviously the guy has great taste in music.
Oh yeah, I was actually going to mention about listening to Prog, different Prog radio stations. If Ted was here, I listen to Progzilla occasionally. Progzilla
Progzilla's great.
Yeah, and then Delicious Agony.
Yeah,
but Progzilla has happened a couple of times. I'll be sitting there at night, and I come in the middle of it, and I hear this song, and I'm thinking, oh, that's really cool. Oh, I like the vocalist. And each time it's been, that was whatever from Enchant's first album. And I didn't recognize Ted's voice. His voice has changed. It was really good then, but it's very different now.
Yeah.
If you don't know it's from those early Enchant stuff, if you don't know it's him, you might not pick it up.
That's true.
His voice is just markedly, I don't even say improved, it's just changed and aged to where it is now, and he just kicks ass.
It's better. I'm sorry, it's better, and that is really a rare thing. Ted's not our age, but he ain't no spring chicken either, and for him to be singing the way he's singing on this new record, absolutely stunning. Really cool.
Yeah, with age, I think vocalists, it can go either way. They can, Ted just gets better. Some vocalists, as you get older, your vocal cords change.
Yeah.
You don't have the control anymore. And I think the most you hear it is when drummers. There are some drummers you can tell, oh yeah, this guy's losing it or whatever. Yeah. But then there's some guys like Phil Ehart in Kansas, who I've seen like 4 times in the past few years. He's in his 70s and he kicks ass like he's a teenager. And I think
I've seen Kansas like 3 years ago. Yeah, I can confirm that.
Yeah, it's just like a freak of nature type of thing. And he just keeps doing it. And then there's some drummers who just lose. I remember seeing Genesis, the first final tour in 2007, I think it was. And it was great, but you could tell Phil had lost and even Chester kind of had lost some of the energy and some of the songs were pitched down. And with Kansas, boy, it's like you're looking at him in 1976. None of that.
We're not slowing the tempos down. We're not doing any of that. Phil still has it. He's great.
Oh yeah,
definitely.
So so no, I get it with the age thing, but yeah, Ted, that's funny. I didn't even recognize his voice.
That's awesome. No, I do have one more question, and I'm going to ask you because I know you got to get going here in a minute.
I got another 10 minutes, so we're good.
Cool. The new album, 10 songs, right?
Yeah.
On the basic track, and then you've got a bonus disc with some live tracks, which was cool because like one from each of the first 3 albums. I'm glad you did that, right?
That's the idea.
But the album proper, there's only one mini epic, I guess you could say. The Once He Was, I think it's called.
He once was
4.
It's He Once Was, which is confusing.
That's Lexa kicking in, but man, what a song.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, that one, the beginning of that song where it starts with the piano and the voice and the flute. Da 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 da. That's a melody and chord progression. I've had around for 10 years. And I've never been able to make it work. I would start songs for other albums we did, and then it would just kind of trail off. This happens a lot. Every writer will tell you this. And they have certain things they like. They can't really work it out. And for some reason this time it worked out, and I came up with a way to expand upon it. And originally the song was going to be maybe 5 minutes top, but I would get along with the story and think, oh, now I want to say this. And so it got longer and longer and longer. And the song is based on, I was reading this book called The Facemaker by Lindsay Fitzharris, who does, it's nonfiction. She writes about medical stuff. And this is about a guy who was a plastic surgeon right after World War I in England, who devised, at the time, very innovative ways of doing facial surgery on soldiers who would come back after suffering horrendous injuries. And there was a vignette of one of these soldiers in the book. And I didn't base it on that, but I like some of the things. He started out as essentially a conscientious objector, but he was kind of guilted into going into the war finally. And then he came back and mentally and physically screwed up. So I kind of wrote the story based on that kind of idea. Although listening to it, you would never think, oh, this is about a soldier who meets a guy in town after World War I.
I got to say, I didn't get that from the lyrics.
No one will, but that's what we talked earlier about writing as fiction. I come up with a scenario and write a story around the scenario or the vibe or whatever. And I'm really happy with the way that
I love that song, man. I'm a sucker for a deceptive cadence, for a hook where your brain, you just throw that, little chord in there you don't expect, and you expect it to resolve a different way. And man, it's just so catchy. It's so awesome. I love how it bookends the song. It gives it this epic proportion, kind of the gravitas that you expect from Pattern Seeking Animals, man. Just a great track. Love it.
Let me just ask you this. Honestly, what did you think of the sax solo?
Oh, man. Who's playing the saxophone?
It's the guy named Alex Bone. He's a young kid. He's like 20. He's from England. I did it remotely. But the reason I'm asking that is because I was going, Ted does a guitar solo, and I was thinking what would be just something different. And it kind of reminded me, the music reminded me a little like Supertramp or Pink Floyd there. And I thought,
I was getting Dark Side vibes all up and down that particular section of the song. And then the sax kicks in and it's like, no, man, I'm all in. This is so good.
But here's the division. A lot of people hate sax. And two of the people in the band, I don't want to name them, but one of the guy names with Ben Frenner, and the other one was Mimi Legan.
Yeah, funny.
Heard it and thought, sax? You can't put a sax in this song. And I loved it, and Dave loved it.
Yeah.
And then Frank, he said, I'm not a sax fan. Sax is very divisive in prog music,
It is,
you know.
it is.
But I loved it, so obviously I got the final say. But so I just take a little informal survey because I think it's funny. I think it's just funny.
You're right. The saxophone seems to be a very oddly divisive instrument in prog. I remember the very first time a horn appeared in a Genesis song.
Oh yeah.
And people just wanted to kill Phil Collins and blame him for everything. And
Paper Late. Is it with the Earth, Wind, and Fire horn? What the hell? But again,
I thought it sounded pretty good myself.
Oh, see, that's the thing. I liked up until Calling All Stations. I liked all eras of Genesis.
Yeah.
I went just with them because there are some bands you expect to sound the same as their first album, like AC/DC. You don't want them to expand. They put a new. You want them to sound like AC/DC.
You never wanted the Ramones to grow up.
Yeah, exactly. But with Genesis, do you want them to be 16 albums later still doing like 12 string and bass pedal stuff?
Yeah.
I mean, it might be fine, but at some point you just start going, okay. U2's the example of a band that changed. You go from like Joshua Tree and Unforgettable Fire, and then you go to
Octoon
Baby, a radical change in sound with one of the great songs of all time, which has to be one of the great songs of all time written by anyone ever. They made a very big change, which could have been dangerous for a band like that. But everyone, luckily, that was really good, so they couldn't, people couldn't resist it.
We're probably in a minority, but I love U2.
Me too.
From Boy on, I was working in a record store when Boy came out, and I fell in love with that band. And then I met them when they were touring October. They were opening for the Jay Giles band, and I was backstage, and talking to Bono and stuff. It was awesome. They were really cool before they were big old stars. I bet they're not so cool anymore, but I'm going to say they were awesome. All four of them were so nice to me, so cool. I've been a lifelong fan ever since. I was like 18 at the time, probably. Yeah, you don't forget that stuff.
Yeah, I never met him, but when that Joshua Tree album came out, it was almost, again, one of those religious experiences. That song didn't leave the turntable for years. I love that album so much. So I'm a fan. But again, U2 very divisive with prog fans.
They are.
A lot of guys.
I love division. I love controversy. I love shaking it up. This is what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to be talking about music and battling about music. Supposed to be getting passionate about it. It's supposed to matter, man, like it did once in your life. So yes, I'm talking to you, Mr. Boomer, watching my video. It's supposed to matter. You're supposed to care. And there's bands out there worth caring about. And I'm here to tell you, I'm sitting down with the mastermind of one of them right now, John Boegehold from Pattern Seeking Animals. Their fourth album is due out October
27th
on Inside Out Records. It's called Spooky Action at a Distance, and it's terrific, John. I'm congratulations. I'm really, really happy with it, man.
Thanks. Depending when you put this up, we have another
tomorrow, brother.
Friday, Underneath the Orphan Moon, single and video coming out.
Oh,
yeah,
very good. So that's
haven't announced yet. That's the third single, and the
third single.
And then the fourth one will be Clouds That Never Rain, which comes out on release day. It'll be a video for that one too.
Well, I will be putting a link to the first two videos in the description of this video. And if your boy follows through and remembers, I will stick the link to the third single if I remembered it. I'm so bad at that kind of stuff.
Oh, you tell me.
I'll try.
I had someone run into me just out, a tenant of mine, and she said, can you do this for me? I said, if you don't send me an email, I will forget by the time I turn around when I'm talking to you. Yeah. The mind at this age is just, it's gone. It's like,
I need an assistant, man. This is the one man show here. I need an assistant.
I do too. Cool.
All right.
Okay, cool.
Right. Thank you so much for sitting down in the Prog Corner with me. It's the great John Boegehold from Pattern Seeking Animals. Thank you, John. Really appreciate it. And anyway, peace in the Middle East and God save the king. I will see you punks on the hippity hoppity flippity floppity.
Adios.